Training for the Olympics in archery. How to train for the Olympics in archery. How you doing? My name is Sean McVeigh with Sean's Outdoor Adventures. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to train for the Olympics in archery. Many people have had a dream at one point in time of being in the Olympics, and there's really no better sport to try to do that than archery, because you can do it at any age. Now, if you want to train for the Olympics in archery, the first thing you're going to need is the equipment to be able to practice archery. So your Olympic style recurve is going to look like this. It's going to have a long stabilizer off the front, two on either side here. And what these are intended to do is help balance the bow. Imagine walking a tightrope and you're holding your arms out or a long pole, and that helps you keep balance. Well, that's what stabilizers do. They help keep the bow vertical. You're also going to need the bow itself and a sight, a rest, and a clicker. Now, I've been practicing archery for 41 years now, and it's only been in the past month that I've gotten an Olympic style recurve bow. And the reason is I could just never afford it before. Typically, a quality setup is going to cost several $1,000s to get an Olympic style recurve setup. I've had the good fortune of getting one of these Sanlita Miracle X10 Olympic style recurve bows. These retail for $7.99, and the quality is equal to some of the other brands that are costing twice that. So this has enabled me to get into Olympic style recurve. If you're someone like me who has a tight budget and this is something that's been a bucket list dream of yours, perhaps now this is going to be an opportunity for you to give it a try. I'll provide a link in the description section for this particular bow. It comes complete with a high quality sight, such as you see here, and there's tool-free vertical adjustment, so you can move the sight up and down depending on the distance that you are shooting from. It comes with all the stabilizers you see here, and you get to pick the length. Most people, their setup is a 30-inch stabilizer off the front and about 12-inch back facing. I went with a 28-inch, and I can't even tell you why. I just said a little prayer to God, and I said, Lord, what's the best one for me? And I just had a feeling to go with the 28. So for whatever reason, I went with a 28-inch front-facing stabilizer, but that's going to be your particular choice. A very common setup is 30 and 12. It does come with a rest and a clicker, as I mentioned. The clicker is important because it helps you duplicate what you're doing every single time. So the key to archery is technique, consistency. That's the key. You need to be able to do the exact same thing every time. And so when you have a clicker, now I'm not going to draw the bow back, but let's pretend that I'm drawing the string, which is making the arrow come back. So as you pull back and you reach full draw, you set your clicker so that at full draw, the clicker is at the very tip of the arrow. Then all you need to do is just pull a tiny bit. The click goes off and you release immediately. And that enables you to know you're releasing the string at the same exact draw length every time. If you'll imagine this, if I pull the bow back this far and shoot the arrow, there's not as much force going to go onto the arrow, so it's going to drop a lot sooner. Then if I pull all the way back here, there's more force on that arrow, so it's going to shoot farther. So when you're aiming at a long distance, if you're not pulling to the exact same point every time, like you pull this far back on one, this far back on the other, you're going to have to change the way you're aiming in order to compensate for that. So to stabilize all that, you use the clicker. It has ILF limbs, which is International Limb Fit. You can interchange the draw poundage by changing out the limbs. So I have a limb that is a 36 pound limb. However, the limbs are rated at a 28-inch draw length, and I have close to a 32-inch draw length. So when I am at full draw, although this is a 36-pound limb, I'm holding about 50 pounds or close to it, because the farther you pull back with a recurve bow, the more weight you're holding. That's important for you to know when you're ordering your bow. What is your draw length, and then what draw weight do you want to start with, or do you want to shoot? Another nice thing is you can start with one draw weight, 1 poundage of limb, and then if you decide you want to go with a heavier draw weight, you can simply buy a new set of limbs. All the rest of your bow setup stays the same, and then you put the new limb in. It just pops right in. Some other pieces of equipment you'll want is an arm guard. Regardless of how experienced of a shooter you are, because of the form that you use when shooting an Olympic style recurve, the string travels very close to your arm, and it is possible for it to hit the arm, especially after the arrow leaves the bow. The string continues to travel and it could come in contact with your wrist. So a lot of archers will wear this just to create or to prevent just a little bit of skimming of the string on your wrist. You'll also want a shooting tab. One last thing aside from arrows that you'll want that I don't have here is you put a little strap around your fingers so that you don't grip the bow at all. I still have to get one of those, don't have it yet. Now I want to talk briefly about technique. As I mentioned before, technique is a key for archery. When you're drawing back the bow, and I do have a target right over here. When you're drawing back the bow, you want to do the same exact thing every time. So I'm putting my arrow under the clicker and I place my arrow on the string. Now I have all white fletch on this arrow here, so there is no odd color fletch. You want the fletch, the third fletch, to face directly away from the bow. Very often if you have one odd color, it's going to be that fletch that faces away from the bow. When it comes to setting your shot up for the Olympic style recurve, you set your feet first, and you typically set your front foot back a little bit from your front, and then you pivot at the waist into position. You're going to point, I usually point this front hip at the target. Then I point my front shoulder at the target. So as far as my setup, I set my grip, I've got my fingers on the string, rotate my front hip in, rotate my front shoulder in, come to full draw. While I'm at full draw, I'll take aim, wait till I hear the clicker go off. As I'm at full draw and aiming, I'll pull gently away from the target and wait for the click to go off, and then I release the string. Another element of technique is you want to use your bone structure to help you hold the weight at full draw. For this example, I'm going to set the bow down. Okay, I place my feet, I set them. Here's my feet perfectly perpendicular to you. Now I'm going to move my front foot back a little bit and it rotates my hips over. But for the shot, I'm going to point my hips back toward the target. And what this does is it actually forces me to create back tension when I'm drawing. And what I mean by back tension is you'll feel the muscles right down your back here as you get to full draw. So this front foot, you rotate it back, you rotate your hip back in, point your shoulder toward the target, and you don't want this to come up. You want to keep that down. Okay, I'm going to push a little bit toward the target. When I come to full draw, this deer's nose is in my way. When I come to full draw, I anchor in my elbow back here. You don't want your elbow out to the side. You want it straight back. And what that does is it creates a straight line with your bones, and it's hard to crush that line. And so in a sense, you can relax your muscles a little bit because your bone structure is actually helping you hold the bow. This is an important part. In the U.S. Olympic archery, the way they term this is transferring to hold. So you come to full draw and then you transfer to hold by bringing that elbow straight back, and you've got good posture, good technique here. You're pulling slightly in, click goes off. You release, this hand comes straight back this way behind your head. One last thing I'll mention is I would encourage you to practice one shot at a time, or two at the most if you're just getting started. What you do when you're practicing with one shot or two at a time is you stop and analyze your shot every time. So you'll take your shot and then let's say you don't hit the mark. Well, why? You can kind of analyze your body movements. Did I rotate myself properly? Sometimes you'll notice your head is turned a little differently. So that might have thrown off my aiming a little bit. You need to get your head pointed straight at the target every time. You don't want it pointed off this way for one shot, this way for another, because that's changing the angle of your eye in relation to the sight. So one, maybe two shots at a time. Analyze what you do after each shot, And then ultimately you want to work your way up to practicing with 3 arrows at a time, because in a round you shoot 3 arrows. One last thing I'll mention is I would encourage you to start off practicing at 20 yards or 20 meters, around that distance. That's how far I'm shooting in this video. But then you ultimately want to work your way back, because in Olympic distance, Olympic archery distance, you're shooting 70 meters to your target, which is quite a distance. So you want to work your way back to that, but build up your consistency and accuracy at closer distances first. So I'm Sean McVeigh, Sean's Outdoor Adventures. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it's given you some things to think about. And if you're considering giving it a try, you want to go for it. You want to go for the Olympics. This bow right here is a high quality bow, and you really could go far in the tournament world, because you're going to need to get into tournament archery if you're ultimately going to get into the Olympics. So you want to qualify. In order to qualify for the Olympics, you've got to take a major title in the U.S. So you got to start competing in some of those national tournaments in the U.S. with USA Archery. If you want to pick up this particular bow, the Miracle X10, there's a link for it in the description section. This is what I'm using as I begin to get used to Olympic style archery. I don't know if I'll ever make it there, or if I'll ever actually go through the process to try to get there, but it's fun to at least train for it in the meantime. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care and God bless.